I've often talked about for new leaders and new teams, you have 3 years to get it right. You have 3 years, normally. And now we're going to talk about your time. The first year, it's the other guy's fault. You know, we're doing the best we could. Look at what we had. Look at this, you know, we're cleaning it up. The second year, it's our fault, right? We're learning. You know, we think we're hitting stride. We got a little momentum. The third year, well, I guess we got to own it. We can't put it off any longer, right? Well, that's typically what we talk about, and that's typically the case. In your case, I think you're on about a 1.5 year timetable. You already started on this journey, and you're coming together, and you have to come together quickly. And you do, indeed, have to seize the day. In the next 1.5 years, you're either going to hit stride or you're not. And I'm excited about the prospects. I've had a chance to look under the hood and learn about your company. And I'm excited about the prospects you have. I also know and trust Ed Breen. And I'll take it to the bank anytime. Ed believes in you in a big-time way, and he's excited about your prospects, and so am I. I started at General Mills at an entry-level job, and I worked there for almost 10 years, worked in both their food business, which you know them for, but they were also the world's largest toy company. And I went and worked in their consumer toy business for 3 years, at which point I was fired. That's another story. We're not going to get into that today. I then was recruited into Kraft Foods, and I worked there for another 7 years. And I worked there mostly in marketing positions, but then I ended up running corporate strategy. Don't ask me why. But I actually enjoyed that. I loved looking at how the whole thing came together and starting to craft a strategy for moving the whole enterprise forward. It was great stuff. During that period of time, we were acquired by Philip Morris, and that was an exciting adventure. Ultimately, I was recruited by KKR to go to Nabisco right after Barbarians at the Gate. And if you ever read the book or saw the movie, you know just a little bit about what happened, because most of what happened they couldn't write or talk about. And so I was there for a decade. We turned that place around. It had a great run, created a lot of value by the time we were done. Unfortunately, for KKR, it took twice as long. They had hoped to be out in 5 years, and they didn't get out for 10. Then I was recruited to Campbell, right across the river here. And I was there for 11 years, and you'll hear that story in a minute. When I retired from there, I ended up somehow as chairman of Avon Products. And that was a very difficult situation where we didn't have 3 years either. We had about 1.5 years. And we had to wrestle that to the ground, and it happened to be an extraordinarily difficult and ugly resolution, but we did the best we could for all of the stakeholders. That's my background. So I'll talk to you about Campbell, but there's a much broader base here. I'll give you 6 key thoughts, and then I'll take you through the Campbell story, because it is a story of transformation. And believe me, if you can take an old economy canned soup company making the same product 100 years later that's being compared to a buggy whip by the leading industry analyst and is headquartered in the poorest, most dangerous city in the United States, Camden, New Jersey, and has lost half its market value in 1 year, if you can take that and get it back on the right footing, believe me, you've got an easy job. In fact, they should take your numbers up, Rose. See, I can get away with saying that. Why not? Anyway, if we could do it, you can do it. And I want to spend some time there because there's some important lessons that we learned, some of which we learned the hard way, that I want you to have a chance to think about. And in that regard, I'm sort of priming the pump for your work that you're going to be doing in groups later on. So I'll take you through key thoughts, Campbell story, wrap up, and then we hope to have some conversation, and Allison's going to help me navigate that. I'm going to get these 6 key thoughts. You're going to remember these 6 thoughts. One of them, you're going to remember them more than anything else I do today. The first one, it's a grow or die world. There is no in-between, especially in today's marketplace. Dynamic, challenging, demanding. You either grow or you die. We always suggest you choose the former and not the latter. This is not rocket science, guys. You can do this. But if you're not growing, I'm telling you, in today's marketplace, you are at risk. If you're not growing individually and collectively, you are at risk. So the good news is you've got a great platform to grow with. The bad news is you really don't have a choice. And hence, carpe diem, seize the day, make the most of this moment. You've got a wonderful moment in time. Make the most of it, because it is indeed a grow or die world. Success belongs to those who seize the moment. As I said, you've got 3 years, 18 months, 3 years to start to hit stride with this proposition. If you don't hit stride with this proposition, we're at risk in some way, shape, or form, which will demand more change. You hit stride, all is well. You know, the one thing you can control, you can't control virtually anything that comes your way. But as an organization, the one thing you can control is that you have the power of choice. You can choose to respond to everything coming at you in a constructive way, pull together, get aligned, and go forward, or you can let it be your undoing. Again, I suggest the former, not the latter. Third thought, it is all about the people. And quite frankly, it's about you, but it's not about you. If there are 7,000 people in this unit, there are 6,875 people that are counting on you to lead them to higher ground. You owe them. You owe them a best effort. And they owe you, in response to that, their best efforts. But you have to lead from in front on this. As a CEO at Campbell, my gosh, I started and there was a lot of change at the time, and I'll get into some of it, but I quickly discovered that of the 1,000 decisions made every day in that company, I was not in the room for 999 of them. And by the time I would hear about those decisions, they would be reimagined in a way that would make perfect sense to me, even if it didn't. Right? I was totally dependent on the people in our organization to be driving in alignment for the kind of goals we had mutually agreed upon when I wasn't in the room. And you're in the same predicament. And it's only going to get worse as decentralized decision-making takes over, on-demand expectations rise with your customers. Those people are going to be having to make independent decisions, independent of you, on demand. You are totally dependent on them. Make the most of it, and we'll talk more about that. But it is all about the people. In that sense, it's not about you. Fourth thought, embrace the genius of the and. Now I'm going to introduce a concept which I discovered, there really is a Jim Collins in Dow DuPont, huh? There's another Jim Collins who's better known than that Jim Collins. There's a Jim Collins who wrote the best-selling business book of all time, Good to Great. And he has great language for this, and I steal this from him. He came and tried to enlighten me many years ago. Actually, he did a pretty good job. He challenged me to embrace the genius of the and on everything we were dealing with. And in this sense, the genius of the and, as you start thinking about your people, I would say you have to be tough-minded on performance standards of performance. You have to. You have no choice. You have targets to meet. You got to deliver, okay? The challenge is, though, that at the same time you have to have standards of care with all of your colleagues. It's not one or the other. I grew up in an era where, you know, what do you want me to be, tough, or do you want me to be nice? You know, Do you want me to be courteous, or do you want me to be rough? Do you want me to set a standard that intimidates people and drives the business forward? I was uncomfortable with that. And ultimately, I landed on this proposition that says, look, I have to be tough-minded on standard of performance, and so do you. But at the same time, I need to be tender-hearted with people because it's all about the people. And they have to be representing me in the best possible way when I'm not in the room. Now, we all have experiences with people who have been tough-minded and tender-hearted. We have them either as parents or as children, where some parent or grandparent has had a high standard for each of us. But at the same time, we never doubted that they cared because they were compassionate. Standards were high, compassion was high. As you go through this process, you have to have high standards, but you have to have high standards for caring as well as performance. And you can do this, and I'll talk about that. Clarity of expectations is critical. I loved Rose's stuff, and I didn't get to see it ahead of time, but it's clear as day what needs to be done here. I would challenge you to make the clarity of standards for how you're going to do it even more clear, and you can take a crack at that as you go through the day and the months ahead. Clarity of expectations is critical. Things get lost in the sauce in our world, in our corporate world. You'll talk about something, by the time it gets translated to the game of telephone, 3 levels out, it will be different. We have to be incredibly clear here. I think the template for that was set with the earlier presentation. We have to be incredibly clear. But you have to carry that ball and be equally clear with your people, and they have to be equally clear with their people. Clarity of expectations is critical. You can't afford to have someone say, I didn't understand. Can't afford it. 6th thing, you have to confront the brutal facts. Celebrate what works and deal with what doesn't. Again, we're on a fairly compressed timetable here. We've got maybe 1.5 years, 2 years to make the changes we need to make to get on the path we need to be on. You can't be the leader that is fiddling while Rome is burning. Can't. Because you grow or you die. And I'm really rooting for you guys. All 125 of you. All right? So those are the 6 key thoughts. Oh, I'm sorry, I got 7. This is my favorite. This is actually my favorite. Stephen Covey used to say this to me all the time. I did a lot of work with him a long time ago. And he said, Doug, you can't talk your way out of something you behaved your way into. It sounded like something my father would have said to me when I came home past curfew one night and I tried to explain to him why I was late. You cannot talk your way out of something you behaved your way into. You have to behave your way out of it. And there are things that you're going to uncover as you start to work together as a group where you've behaved your way into some good stuff and you got to keep going, but you've also behaved your way into some dysfunctional behavior, and you got to deal with it. And you got to deal with it in a very candid way. But I would tell you, it doesn't happen overnight. You've got to be gentle with yourself and realize it took us a while to get into this mess. It's going to take us a while to get out. I know we have a lot of pressure to turn this around, but on some of these strands, it's going to take longer. And you've got to be very clear-eyed about that.